How's it going, YouTube? Coming at you today with another video, and today, guys, what I'm bringing to you is Plunder Patrol. Now, Plunder Patrol is my favorite rogue deck out there. I think that it's a lot of fun, and this format is going to be no different. I think that it's going to be very competitive, especially with the new addition of Jord. Jord's absolutely insane, and we'll talk about why that is and exactly what it does for the deck, because moving forward, it's going to be such a key factor. I'm very excited to be able to tell you a lot about this deck today, because there's a lot of different cool ideas that I've been messing around with, and it seems like there's a lot of interest in this deck, because I posted a little earlier today as far as which decks you'd like to see. Labyrinth, Plunder, and Evil Eye being the top three, so those will all be on their way, but Plunder is here now. So I do hope to enjoy today's video, and if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, definitely go ahead and subscribe, because once we hit 16,000 subscribers, I'll be giving away the Player's Choice Collaboration Spellground. And if you haven't already checked out my sponsors over at Imperium Duels, Dragon Shield, or Gem, definitely go ahead and do so. And so without further ado, let's hop right into our first slide. The first thing I want to talk about is going to be Jord. Jord's so insane. The pendulum effect alone really does solve a problem that the deck's been having for a really long time, and that's going to be that you can declare an attribute, return this to the extra deck, and then special summon a Plunder token to both boards with that attribute. So not only do you start off with a level 4 to be able to go into even more plays, but you also give your opponent that light token, which is crazy because Liss is probably the best card in your extra deck, because you have the ability then to go ahead and summon your Link 2, get a draw, summon Liss, and then on your opponent's turn, you can go ahead and re-summon out your Link 2 from Liss's effect, and then Liss can go ahead and negate something, but you don't need to have an equip for the effect on this one to be even a quick effect. You just don't get the ability to search if you go ahead and use the effect to reborn the Link 2 earlier, which again, you just get so much advantage by just having the Jord and then going into Liss. Then you get the free draw. I like this a lot, especially in a format where we're so reliant on hand traps, because next format, Imperm, Nibiru, these cards are going to be really important. Now, there's two effects to this card. The pendulum effect is already really insane, but now we have a monster effect that is equally very good. If your opponent special summons a monster, you can add one Plunder Patrol card from your deck to your hand. Then, if this card is equipped with a Plunder Patrol card, special summon a Plunder from your deck. So you can summon Whitebeard or Redbeard and they get another effect of the Link 2, which is even crazier. And then you can go ahead and target one Plunder card in your graveyard and then add it to your hand, and if you do, place this card in your pendulum zone. So let's say that you go to do that effect and your opponent imperms this, you still get a plus on your opponent's turn because you're allowed to add a Plunder card, which is even crazier. So there's a lot of really cool things about this. If you are playing the adventure engine, then of course you can go ahead and still set up things like Draco back onto this, which is fine. I think that Jord is really going to be a key factor in the deck moving forward. Having the 3,000 defense, that's not easy to deal with. So I really do like this card and what it's going to be doing for the deck. Talking about cards like Nibiru, they're going to be so crucial next format, and this is a deck that really does thrive off of this because of the fact, again, that you get that light token on your opponent's board, which is really imperative to going ahead and summoning out Liss. Liss is really the heart and soul of this deck. You really need a way to get that on board to really be able to start your plays early, but this is definitely going to be a mandatory card next format, no matter what you're playing, in my opinion. I think that you have to be on rock, and that's going to be another thing that you got to be really mindful of, because that can hurt pretty bad if you are playing Plunder. Just to know that this card's going to be really common, so a lot of people are going to be leaning more toward the adventure engine. But I'm going to show you another list today that I think is pretty viable, and it's just a going second list with some pretty crazy options, especially against the Kashtira deck, because we already know cards like a Rise Heart are going to be very problematic. So moving forward, though, talking about a Rise Heart, another card that's going to be mandatory in everyone's main aura side is going to be Book of Eclipse. You can play Book of Lunar Eclipse, that is a discard, which is pretty cool for things like the Whitebeard, but at the same time, I think that Book of Eclipse is just the better card. It's just very reactive. You don't need to use other resources. It can get ashed, but at the same point, I do think that this is just fine. There's a lot of ways to even go for the Zeus play in this deck too, to make sure that your opponent doesn't get the draw. So lots of things here that I think are really important to consider, especially if you're just going to go like Dweller into Zeus in this deck, something that you definitely can do. So I think that playing the Eclipse is going to be very mandatory in this deck, as well as it's just going to be really important. But mostly in the sideboard, as we will see throughout the entire format. We might see Book of Eclipse go to the main deck. I think that Ash is still not going to be the hand trap of choice. I think I'd almost still play Bell over Ash, but it's just because if you do play against decks like Kashtira, Ash is only good to a point, because if they start with like Unicorn, then you Ash, then you still get something ripped out of your extra deck, then it still is unfortunate. So I don't really know if Ash is still going to be the answer, but it's definitely going to be a good card versus Eclipse. So who really knows? We're going to have to see once we start seeing some tournament reports. But moving on here, this is going to be the list that I'm going to be starting out with, playing the 2 tasking, the 2 talents. I think that's just going to be the correct ratio for those 2 cards. I think if you're going to be playing one, you have to play the other. Tasking and talents are both fantastic cards. They're really insane, especially when you can set the Rite of Armister, right? Like, that's kind of insane. But then you also have talents to go ahead and be reactive. You have Ash Blossom, you have the Nibiru, you have Imperm. I think that Ash Blossom is still going to be like fine though, because there's going to be a lot of branded. So I do think that this is okay. The ratios in this deck are pretty standard. You're playing 2 of the Bluebeard, you have 3 of the Golden Hair, 2 of the Redbeard. Everything in this list is pretty standard as to what the deck typically does. I am siding the Fenrir though, and then you see the Arise Heart in my extra deck, because if you have a situation where you're playing against Kashtira and your opponent uses the Shangri-La, then you can go ahead and just summon out the Fenrir, go immediately into your Rise Heart, attack something, then go immediately into Zeus. So it just gives you another option for a board clear against Kashtira when that's already a not favorable matchup. The other thing that I want to mention though that I think is really cool is that Jord allows you to put a token on your opponent's board if you're playing against Cash, and then they can't summon any Cash. So that's kind of cool. They can start off with maybe like a Rise Heart though, and then just go ahead and normal summon that, or if they have like Birth plus like Fenrir, then maybe you could just do that. But it does create a very awkward situation to where your opponent can't just like summon Fenrir, summon Unicorn. So I like that a lot. I think that's really cool. Kurakara, I think, is just going to be a mandatory staple. It's just really good against Kashtira. Bell, just very generically respecting the fact that we'll play against a lot of tier. There's still going to be a lot of players on Runic, because I do personally think that Runic's going to be the best answer to the Kashtira end board. So maybe just having Bell for the ability to stop the fountain from drawing. Just a lot of different things that you can Bell to that I really enjoy, especially the shuffle backs. Those cards are just fairly annoying to play against. So definitely having Bell, I think, is just overall a very good card just to have. I've been thinking about maybe Gamma as well, because Gamma is also just very good. But we'll have to see how the format plays out and after testing. But I did say that there was a different list that I want to show you that I think is really cool as far as like what the deck can accomplish and where I could see the deck going. So the next one that I have for you is definitely going to be going second. Main decking evenly, because this is the best board clear that we have against things like Meta Noise and the tier deck. And we also just have the best board clear against Kashtira, because there's no end board that has a negation, unless there's like Judgment in the side, right? But then Kaiju Slumber is insane. You have a lot of easy ways to go ahead and summon out things like your level 8s in your extra deck. And then you also just have the ability to go ahead and Kaiju Slumber, summon an 8 to your board. So you can even summon things like Dingirsu, just have another clear on the board. The Kaiju Slumber alone, it just allows you to be able to put a different attribute on your opponent's board, which of course is going to be something that you really want to do. It also is just a really clean answer to the Kashtira end board. There's just a lot of reasons why I think that the Kaiju Slumber is going to be very important. There's definitely a few things here that I think are going to be pretty key. Talking even more so about the Nibiru, again, just having the ability to clear a board, the Kaiju Slumber, clear a board, Imperm to go ahead and stop things without making tactics or tasking live, evenly to clear a board. Looking at my extra deck, again, focusing on Zeus. The sideboard is going to be very much so more generic to whatever the format ends up developing into. I do think that Fenrir is going to end up being on my side. I think that Kirkar is just going to be a staple with Book of Eclipse, so we'll have to see. But I do think that Zeus is going to be a card that is going to be very mandatory. I've been seeing a lot of people citing a copy of Zeus or trying to play more than one because of the Mind Hacker rip. That's something that you're going to have to think about too, because Zeus is the easiest board clear. And if you have one in your extra deck, it's going to be the easiest thing for your opponent to go ahead and just pluck. So I think that's also something to keep in mind though, because if you're playing against like Kashtira, the only card they're really scared about is going to be Zeus. So unless you're just playing like one kit in tier, which you should just be on 2 anyway, your extra deck's pretty safe. If you were to run like the second Zeus, it definitely makes it very awkward on your opponent. So just a couple things to think about. But overall, I do think that this is another solid option. Lots of going second cards. You're still playing the same amount of engine, just playing different cards to go ahead and break a board or set up. Then going second into a board, of course, having things look evenly, the Kaiju Slumber. Even against a lot of the rogue matchups, I think Kaiju Slumber is just really cool. I do think this is another list that I would say is very viable into the format. So definitely let me know what you think about it, because this is definitely going to be one of the more creative lists, whereas this is going to be a lot more standard. The Brave package alongside a lot of hand traps and the Plunder count. That is very typical. Just again, the 2 Redbeard, the 2 Bluebeard. Sometimes just like 1. I think 2 is fine. So I hope everyone enjoyed today's video. If you want to see any other deck, definitely let me know down in the comments below. I am looking at Labyrinth and Evil Eye soon. If you haven't already joined my Discord, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, or if you want a coaching session on Metafy, that's all down in the description below. And if you haven't already subscribed, definitely subscribe to the channel. 16,000 soon. Hope that everyone has a wonderful night. I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.